Feel the heart. Experience the soul. Community Pulse.
Sister Magboeba joins me in studio this morning for today's edition of Social Justice. This morning we continue our conversation, a response to the proposed comprehensive sex education curriculum to be introduced into our schooling system in the year 2020. This is Pathways to Sexual Courtesy, Part 2. Now, Sister Magboeba, last week we sort of laid the foundation for this discussion. You and I, in the planning of running this particular program, there was a general consensus that this isn't a topic that should be rushed, and so we will give it as much time as it needs, and we will allow the listeners to pose their questions. A reminder to all of you that the questions we are taking questions and comments, but we will not open up the lines. We will, however, take them via WhatsApp 0786101112, and we will answer them at the start of every new segment. So get your comments and your questions through 0786101112. A reminder, our lines are not open. We will not be taking your calls for this hour. Now, Sister Magboeba, last week we laid the foundation for this discussion. We spoke very briefly about the approach that should be taken when you have conversations as such, and the issues that exist within our society because of removing the God consciousness from having the birds and the beestalk essentially with your children. We also spoke about where children receive their information from, and so we continue our conversation like that. And don't worry, we are getting, because I've got a lot of messages through, like I have a 3-year-old, or I have a 9-year-old, or I have a 15-year-old, when are you getting to this? We are going to get to them. But in today's edition, we will try and start hopefully today with those introduction. But essentially today we're going to break down the manner in which you should be approaching the conversation before you actually have the conversation. Sister Magboeba?
Shukran, Sister Qadra, for that introduction. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil mursaleen. Sayyidina wa nabiyyina wa maulana Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, our respected listeners. Yes, indeed, Sister Qadra, last week really was an amazing program for me, because now from the feedback that we got, that means that we are now talking the talk, right? Mm-hmm. And I must say shukran to the listeners for the input, and through this dialogue we can empower ourselves as adults, as guardians and parents, to sit down our children, to talk to them about sex and sexuality in an honest and respectful way.
Yes.
So we also received numerous messages with regards to the topic, ranging from the cycle of development of humankind and also the consequences of abortion, right? Also comparisons that we made, also how sex ed was taught in school during apartheid and now, and also to the concern why it is so difficult for parents today to talk the talk with their children.
Yes.
That was actually one of the very important questions that was really raised. And the answer to that, Sister Qadra, is that that particular concern is because, Sister Qadra, of how intimacy and sexual relations was introduced to us.
Yes.
We have inherited, and I think we have to be honest enough to say this, that we have inherited a culture of shame and sin around the concept. So we just don't talk about it.
Yes.
Right? So, but what I want to say today to the listeners, Sister Qadra, is that we are not alone. Because when we ask the question, why do we not talking the talk in our sacred spaces, in our masajid and in our learning centers, Sister Qadra, is, I picked up a book. I went after my program last week, I went to Claremont, and I picked up a book with the title, Sex, Jesus and the Conversations the Church Forgot.
Okay.
Yeah. And at the back of the book, it actually elaborated where it says, In a world obsessed with sex, why is the church relatively silent about it? While sex is twisted, perverted, cheapened, and idolized in popular culture, we leave young people drowning in the repercussions of misinformation, misunderstanding, and worth-robbing mistakes that could have been avoided. And this is just a brief summary of what the book is all about. And it says here, sex was God's idea. So it's time we invited him back in the bedroom. Right? So also, why are we so concerned about the manner our children are being introduced to sex and sexuality today? Already children are being raised, we know that, in a highly sexualized environment. So over the weekend, I was guided to the website of Freedom of Religion South Africa, which I will actually give to the listeners at the end of the program. They can actually look up and this on this website. It actually gives us the content that our children will be exposed to, and that teachers will be teaching. They will have to workshop it. They will have to discuss it, write exams about it, if we do not put a stop to this. But that means children will be internalizing it, Sister Qadira.
Yes.
So where children at the age, also just one scenario, where children at the age of 11 will already learn about seduction, right? How to seduce the other. So we can say with this CSE curriculum that it's like the education system, Sister Qadira, has become the rapist of our children. It is a kind of rape. As one psychologist says, it robs them of their one chance for innocent and unself-conscious exploration. Because sexuality needs to be unwrapped, like you earlier said, slowly, for it to be real and empowering. Right? So real intimacy is that there is a grace between two people who've opened their hearts to each other along with their bodies. Right? A glimpse of joy that is life-changing, glorious and never forgotten. Real intimacy is a matter of the heart, a spiritual experience. Need I go further?
That's not. You don't have to go further. And Sister Magboeba, you know, this is the mindset, because obviously the pushback for the introduction of the CSE curriculum comes from the older generation. It comes from the parents. I know that there are teachers themselves who are against it, but it comes from the older generation, the ones who were less exposed to the types of sexuality, to the level of sexuality that our kids and our young people, even myself personally, have been, exposed to. And it's not that much of a time difference between your generation, my generation, and the current, school-going generation. And we need to ponder on how much has changed in such a short period of time.
Absolutely. What is also concerns is the Qadira, the one picture that has already gone viral. Right? On social media. Also the cold, callous words that is used with regarding to intimacy.
Yes.
Right? Now, when we look at intimacy between two people, Sister Qadira, real intimacy, the body actually releases the hormone oxytocin. Right? It's a very shy hormone.
Yes.
Right? And that particular hormone has to be unleashed. Right? It's also called the queen of hormones. Right? This hormone actually makes us feel close. It makes us feel trusting. It also makes us feel safe. But if you look at the oxytocin antagonist, in brief, Sister Qadira, it doesn't like strange places. It doesn't like strange people. Now, your children who do not know one another, who do not know one another, will now are learning about seduction, Sister Qadira.
Yes.
So what we also need to realize, if we have been damaged or misused or sexually abused, it will take time to heal from the experience. Sometimes it takes people a lifetime, or sometimes it's irreversible to learn from these wounds. So even religious misbeliefs about sexuality can also be very damaging. And this is what we want to really to correct on this particular program. So to empower you as the parent, how do I teach sex ed to my children? This instruction should begin as early as little minds begin to show curiosity about the little bodies. Right? Might be as early as 2 to 3. Right? So the birds and the bees method, Sister Qadira, have been ridiculed.
Yeah.
Right? But it's the most sensible way to teach your little toddlers about the birds and the bees.
Feel the heart. Experience the soul. Community Pulse.